$40,000 is the kind of number that doesn't just break a system. It breaks dinner tables, it breaks medicine schedules, it breaks rent checks, and it breaks the fragile promise that your child will be safe in a classroom tomorrow. Because when school districts run out of cash, the first thing that disappears isn't a line item, it's the adult in the room. And the ripple hits your groceries, your fuel, your work hours, your childcare, your survival. Maria Gonzalez stands in a parking lot outside an elementary school in the Central Valley with her phone pressed to her ear, hearing a recorded message about another early release day, another staff shortage, another temporary schedule change that's starting to feel permanent. Her paycheck doesn't stretch, not after a weekly grocery run that now lands at $287 for the same cart she used to fill for far less, and she can't leave her shift early again without getting written up. This is what collapse looks like at ground level. Not a dramatic explosion, but a slow detonation. A financial grenade buried inside the calendar, going off one staffing notice at a time. The mechanism is brutally simple. When teachers quit en masse, districts pay more for substitutes, more for overtime, more for crisis fixes, and less of their budget reaches the classroom where it was supposed to land. But the deeper mechanism is even colder. Many districts are paid per student. So when families move away or switch to alternatives or simply vanish from enrollment counts, the funding shrinks while fixed costs stay locked in place like concrete. Robert Chen, a high school math teacher in the Inland Empire, watched 3 colleagues resign before winter break. And he watched the district respond with a calculated retreat that sounded like leadership but felt like surrender. They didn't replace them. They redistributed their students. And Robert's class jumped from 32 to 45, the kind of number that turns teaching into crowd control. He starts work before sunrise and leaves after dark. And he still carries home the faces of kids he couldn't reach, the ones who stopped turning in homework because nobody has time to notice. And while the governor promotes these policies publicly, the reality on the ground is a district can't teach algebra with press releases, and it can't counsel trauma with slogans, and it can't keep a campus safe when the adults who know the kids by name are gone. Aisha Malik drives a bus route that used to be reliable until the district cut runs to save money. And now she watches parents sprinting across intersections to catch a pickup time that keeps changing. She hears the anger in their voices, but she also hears the panic because the moment the bus doesn't come, a parent loses an hour, then loses a shift, then loses a job. When schools wobble, childcare collapses. And when childcare collapses, the labor force buckles. And when the labor force buckles, the local economy starts to sink under its own economic gravity. Daniel Park owns a small printing shop 2 blocks from a middle school, and he can tell you the exact day the dominoes started falling, the day the school announced rotating closures because they couldn't staff classrooms. Parents stopped walking past his storefront. After school foot traffic dried up and the reliable orders for yearbooks and flyers got delayed, then canceled, then replaced with a single email that said budget freeze. He's still paying rent, still paying insurance, still paying for deliveries, and his monthly utilities have climbed to $412, even as his revenue thins out. In a press conference, a budget shortfall sounds like an abstraction, but in Daniel's ledger, it's a deadline. And in his chest, it's a tightness that doesn't go away. There's a story officials like to tell about education spending. A story where more money always means better outcomes, where new mandates always mean progress, where compliance always means safety. But the story families are living is that the money is getting eaten before it ever reaches a classroom, swallowed by administrative growth, legal exposure, pension obligations, and layers of compliance that multiply when the state piles new requirements onto districts already operating on fumes. Every time a regulation changes, someone has to track it, document it, train for it, and prove it. And the cost isn't just dollars, it's time. And time is what teachers don't have. A veteran teacher isn't quitting because she hates kids. She's quitting because she's drowning in paperwork while the kids in front of her are starving for attention. And while the governor promotes these policies publicly, the reality on the ground is the people who can do this work are reaching a point where one more year sounds like a threat instead of a plan. Districts are also trapped by contracts and timelines that don't bend when enrollment drops. And this is the quiet cliff hiding behind the headline. If a district loses 5% of students, it doesn't lose 5% of its costs because the lights still turn on, the buses still need maintenance, the special education services still must be provided, and the debt payments still arrive on schedule. So districts start cutting what they can cut fast. And what they can cut fast is the human layer. That means fewer aides for special needs students, fewer counselors, fewer librarians, fewer nurses, fewer campus supervisors, fewer adults who notice when a child is falling apart. Natalie Ruiz, a school nurse in a coastal district, tells parents to bring their own supplies now because the cabinet that used to hold basics is half empty. She watched a student with asthma sit on a bench wheezing while the office tried to reach a parent who was stuck at work. And she watched the paperwork afterward grow thicker than the care itself. This is the system straining not in one dramatic moment, but in 1,000 small failures that add up to a breaking point. And then comes the next domino. As campuses become less stable, families with means start leaving, and families without means get trapped. The ones who can move because they can't gamble with their kids' safety or their job schedule. And the ones who can't move watch the quality drop around them like a slow leak they can't patch. That's how retail deserts form around schools, too, because businesses don't set up shop near instability. And when foot traffic becomes unpredictable, stores close. And when stores close, neighborhoods hollow out. A mother who used to grab dinner ingredients on the walk home now has to drive 20 minutes for a grocery store that still stocks fresh food burning gas she can't afford at $5.49 a gallon. The wallet math isn't theoretical, it's nightly. It's harsh. It's immediate. You can't budget your way around a school closure when your employer doesn't care that the district is short-staffed. You can't plan ahead when you get a message at noon that pickup is now at 1:15 and you're already on a line that can't stop. And you can't choose better when the only stable options require money you don't have. This is how collapse becomes a conveyor belt, pushing the vulnerable into impossible choices while the insulated congratulate themselves for finding a workaround. Look closely at how the quitting spreads, because it's not random. Teachers quit when the workload becomes unlivable. Yes, but also when the trust breaks. They quit when they feel punished for trying to maintain standards, when discipline policies become a maze, when the consequences for disruption are delayed or denied, and the classroom becomes a place where learning is optional and chaos is rewarded. They quit when housing costs rise faster than salaries, when commuting becomes longer because they can't afford to live near the schools they serve, and when every month feels like a race to cover rent. Tanya Brooks teaches third grade and sleeps on her sister's couch because her rent jumped to $240 for a modest apartment and her paycheck can't catch it. She wanted to be the stable adult in a child's life, but she can't be stable in her own. So she quits, and the district sends out another recruitment email, and the families receive another apology, and the domino line keeps moving. And while the governor promotes these policies publicly, the reality on the ground is a state can mandate outcomes, but it cannot mandate endurance, and it cannot legislate away burnout. Now, watch what happens inside a district office when the cash starts running out. First, they freeze hiring because it's the fastest lever they can pull. Then they cut non-essentials, which often means arts, field trips, after-school programs, tutoring, and anything that makes school feel like more than a holding pen. Then they consolidate classes. Then they close campuses. Then they study restructuring. And all the while, the public is told the situation is manageable. But the district's internal spreadsheets tell a different story because the costs don't stop coming. There are benefits, pensions, healthcare, transportation, special education obligations, and sometimes bond payments that were approved years ago when the enrollment was higher and the optimism was louder. If enrollment drops faster than expected, the district's forecast turns ugly fast. It becomes a slow motion liquidity crisis, a cash flow crunch that sounds like a banker's problem until the day your kid's school announces it can't keep the lights on after June. This is where accountability matters because policy choices decide how tight the squeeze gets. When the state adds new reporting requirements, new training mandates, new curriculum shifts, new compliance enforcement timelines, the districts pay either with dollars or with time. When labor rules change in ways that increase staffing ratios or extend benefits without providing stable funding, districts pay. When permitting delays slow down facility projects, districts pay in overruns in temporary classrooms, in contracted services, in wasted months. When taxes and fees rise in ways that inflate the cost of construction, transportation, and supplies, districts pay, and that cost gets passed down not to a faceless institution, but to the family at the kitchen table. The governor's agenda may be framed as compassion, but incentives matter and unintended consequences don't care about talking points. A mandate without money is not a policy. It's a bill mailed to someone else, and someone else is always the classroom. Kevin Uaha, a father of two, works maintenance at a warehouse, and when his daughter's district cut after school care, he had to pay a neighbor $180 a week to watch her until he got home. Then the neighbor's own job schedule changed and the arrangement collapsed, and Kevin started leaving work early and his boss started noticing. That's how a district's cash problem becomes a household's unemployment problem. The governor's office can say the economy is strong, but Kevin's hours are shrinking and his daughter's reading is slipping and his rent is still due. This is the economic gravity of broken systems, pulling everything nearby into the same downward spiral. As teacher vacancies grow, districts lean harder on substitutes, and substitutes are not a stable workforce. Some are retired teachers trying to make ends meet. Some are college students. Some are people doing their best in a chaotic environment with little training and little support. When subs can't be found, classes get combined in cafeterias and gyms, turning learning into supervision. And when supervision becomes the goal, discipline incidents rise because kids aren't stupid. They know when the adults are overwhelmed. Sophia Martinez, a 9th grader, tells her mother she feels invisible now because nobody has time to notice when she's lost. Her mom tries to hire a tutor, but the cheapest option is $65 an hour. And that's the kind of number that doesn't fit into a budget already bleeding from higher food and gas and utilities. So Sophia falls behind. And once you fall behind, the catch-up is brutal. Now multiply Sophia by thousands. And you're not watching isolated hardship. You're watching a pipeline of future economic damage. When literacy drops, graduation rates fall. When graduation rates fall, college and workforce options shrink. When workforce options shrink, incomes stagnate. When incomes stagnate, tax bases erode. When tax bases erode, cities struggle to fund services. Then public safety, sanitation, and infrastructure start to wobble too. And suddenly the school collapse is not a school story. It's a regional stability story. And while the governor promotes these policies publicly, the reality on the ground is families are being asked to absorb a system's failure as if it's a personal inconvenience instead of a civic emergency. There's another element that doesn't get said out loud. Trust is a currency, and districts are spending it faster than they can earn it back. Every surprise closure burns trust. Every last-minute schedule change burns trust. Every teacher resignation burns trust. Parents start to believe that nobody is in control. And once that belief takes hold, the exodus accelerates. Those who can leave do. Those who can't leave disengage. Enrollment drops again and the funding drops again. And the crisis tightens like a noose. That's the math of per pupil funding in a shrinking community. And it's a trap. You can call it a demographic shift. You can call it a choice. You can call it a trend. But the result is the same. Fewer dollars, fewer staff, fewer services, more quitting, more instability. It's a feedback loop that behaves like a financial grenade with a long fuse because you don't feel the blast until it's already taken out the foundation. On the ground, the pain has a price tag, and it shows up in places people don't think to look. It shows up in a parent's missed shift, in a $38 late fee on a utility bill, in a $120 penalty for a canceled daycare slot, in a $310 a car repair after an extra commute, in a $55 prescription copay that now competes with groceries. Jamal Harris, a single dad in Los Angeles County, keeps a notebook of the dominoes because he says if he doesn't write it down, people act like it isn't real. On Tuesday, his son's school sent him home early. On Wednesday, Jamal missed 2 hours of work. On Thursday, his paycheck came up short. On Friday, the landlord posted a warning notice. That's how fast it moves when your margins are thin. And that's why the phrase teachers quit doesn't begin to capture what's happening. Because what's happening is the destabilization of the workforce that holds up the rest of the workforce. Now look at the districts themselves. Because run out of cash isn't always bankruptcy. It can be something quieter, but just as dangerous. It can be delayed vendor payments, meaning the company that supplies meals starts demanding faster payment. It can be deferred maintenance, meaning a broken HVAC stays broken and classrooms become ovens. It can be reduced transportation, meaning fewer routes, longer walks, more absences. It can be cuts to special education support, meaning families who already fight daily battles now fight the system too. Emmeline Guyan has a son with an IEP, and she says the district keeps changing the staff assigned to her child because aides keep leaving. Her son doesn't handle change well, and every new face is a new setback. Emily has already spent $900 this month on private therapy sessions to fill the gap, and she's not rich, she's just terrified. This is how public systems collapse into private expenses. And that shift is never equal. It produces two California forms, one with workarounds and tutors and flexible schedules, and another where families live under the constant threat of losing income because the school day is no longer reliable. And while the governor promotes these policies publicly, the reality on the ground is the families without cushions are paying for the state's willful blindness with their bodies, their sleep, their kids' futures. The political defense is often the same, that education is locally controlled, that districts make their own decisions, that the state provides resources, that the economy is complicated, but policy shapes the environment districts operate in. And denying that is not nuance, it's willful blindness. When the state sets mandates with strict compliance burdens, districts have to hire compliance staff or divert teachers into training time. When the state changes discipline frameworks or reporting requirements, districts have to build new procedures, hold meetings, create documentation, handle investigations, and that takes hours that used to go to students. When the state makes it harder to build housing, teachers get priced out. When the state's cost structure pushes families out, enrollment drops. When the state pushes aggressive timelines without stable funding, the districts either cut services or burn out staff to meet the targets. Every one of those is a policy choice, and everyone has downstream outcomes that land on a child's desk. Now watch the breaking point arrive because it's closer than people think. A district that's low on cash starts offering early retirement, hoping to reduce payroll. But experienced teachers leaving means the mentorship pipeline collapses and new teachers lose the support they need to survive. Then those new teachers quit too. Then recruitment becomes desperation and districts start lowering standards, offering bonuses, filling classrooms with underprepared staff. That's not a moral failure. It's a signal of a system cornered. In some neighborhoods, the teacher shortage becomes so severe that parents start pulling kids out, not because they want to, but because they don't trust that their child will be taught. And when enough parents pull out, you get something else. You get school campuses that look open but function like shells. In those shells, kids drift. In those shells, discipline spirals. In those shells, learning becomes optional, and the consequences show up years later in unemployment lines and emergency rooms and court calendars. The dominoes don't stop at graduation. They just change costumes. Now add the larger economic context because schools don't collapse in isolation. They collapse in an ecosystem already squeezed by housing, energy, insurance, and food. If a family is already paying $350 a month in rent, a single missed shift can be the difference between stability and eviction. If a family is already rationing medicine, a district's shortened hours can mean a parent can't make it to the pharmacy before closing, and a child's asthma inhaler doesn't get refilled. You can hear it in the voice of Karen Whitfield, a pediatric pharmacist who says more parents are asking how to stretch prescriptions, how to split doses, how to wait. A school schedule is supposed to be a spine the week rests on, and when that spine bends, everything else starts to buckle. Now the exodus, it starts quietly with teachers leaving, then families leaving, then businesses leaving, then the tax base thins, then local governments start cutting services too, then roads get worse, response times get longer, parks get neglected, then neighborhoods start to feel abandoned, and the people who remain feel like they're living inside a slow-moving withdrawal. A calculated retreat becomes the default strategy, and everyone pretends it's temporary while it becomes permanent. And while the governor promotes these policies publicly, the reality on the ground is the state is drifting toward a two-tier future where stability is purchased and instability is inherited. In some districts, the warning signs are visible in the most basic places. The cafeteria menu shrinks, the library hours shrink, the counseling appointments disappear, the after-school sports get cut, and the kids notice because kids are experts at sensing when adults are lying. They sense it when officials say everything is fine, but their classroom has a rotating cast of strangers. They sense it when the principal looks exhausted. They sense it when fights happen and nobody shows up fast enough. They sense it when the teacher they loved stops showing up. They carry that stress home, and stress doesn't stay in a child's body. It spills out. It becomes anxiety, depression, anger, withdrawal. It becomes behavioral issues that parents don't have time to manage because parents are working more just to keep up. Then discipline issues rise. rise, then teachers feel unsafe, then quitting accelerates. This is the feedback loop, the domino logic, and it is merciless. Now consider the quiet geography of collapse because it doesn't hit every neighborhood the same. Affluent areas can fundraise, can pass local measures, can attract staff with better conditions. Lower income areas are trapped. They become the places where teacher turnover is highest, where vacancies are chronic, where class sizes balloon, where services shrink first. And then as those neighborhoods destabilize, they become more likely to turn into retail deserts because businesses don't invest, where families are leaving and schools are unstable. Suddenly, a parent has to take 2 buses to reach a job, and then the job becomes impossible to keep because the school day is unpredictable. A kid misses breakfast at school, and there's no nearby store with affordable food. And the state can call that unfortunate, but it is also predictable because policy made the terrain. When you create an environment where cost of living rises, bureaucracy thickens, and the workforce that holds the public system together is priced out and burned out, the collapse is not a surprise. It is the forecast. Now take the numbers that districts whisper about. The deficit that was manageable becomes structural. The reserve that was supposed to cover emergencies becomes a monthly patch. The bond that was supposed to build the future becomes an anchor. And the gap gets filled with short-term borrowing, one-time money, temporary fixes, the kind of financial engineering that looks stable until it suddenly doesn't. That's the moment the financial grenade goes from metaphor to reality. Because once cash flow fails, the district doesn't have choices, it has consequences. Consequences like layoffs, campus closures, and the kind of chaos that makes families flee. Parents like Miguel Alvarez, who keeps refreshing his email because he's waiting to learn if his son's school will be consolidated next semester. Miguel works construction, and if he has to change job sites because his kid's new school is across town, the commute changes, the hours change, and the paycheck changes. His gas bill already sits at $96 a week just to keep the job. And he doesn't know how to cut that without cutting the job itself. This is how education collapse becomes employment collapse, and employment collapse becomes housing instability. And housing instability becomes everything else. And while the governor promotes these policies publicly, the reality on the ground is no policy speech can pick up a child from a closed campus, and no announcement can replace a teacher who has already decided they can't do this anymore. So what happens next is not a mystery, it's a pattern. Teacher attrition pushes districts toward emergency staffing. Emergency staffing degrades instruction and safety. Degraded instruction and safety push families to leave or disengage. Enrollment drops shrink revenue. Shrinking revenue forces cuts. Cuts increase workload and stress. Stress increases quitting, and the loop tightens until something breaks hard enough that it can't be explained away. Sometimes that break is a district announcing insolvency. Sometimes it's a county stepping in. Sometimes it's a state takeover. Sometimes it's just a slow erosion that never makes national news but destroys a generation's opportunities anyway. The most dangerous part is that collapse can become normal. Families adjust to chaos like it's weather. Teachers stop expecting support. Kids stop expecting stability. And the public stops expecting the system to work. That is the true cost, because once expectations fall, rebuilding becomes harder. Now look at what viewers can actually verify, because this isn't about panic. It's about evidence. District budgets are public, board agendas are public, audit reports exist, vacancy numbers can be requested, enrollment trends are tracked, union negotiations leave trails, spending categories reveal priorities. When a district says it's fine, the documents often say something else. When officials say the cuts are temporary, the multi-year projections often show deficits rolling forward like a wave. When leaders promise reimagining, the line items often show reductions in the very roles that keep kids safe. And every one of these decisions has a human cost you can name. You can name Maria's missed shift. You can name Robert's 45 students. You can name Aisha's canceled route. You can name Daniel's shrinking orders. You can name Emily's $900 therapy bill. You can name Jamal's notebook of dominoes. And you can name the governor's choices that shape the terrain, the mandates, the timelines, the burdens, the incentives. Because accountability starts with refusing to let collapse be described as vague. And while the governor promotes these policies publicly, the reality on the ground is the public system is being hollowed out and families are being asked to pretend it's progress. The haunting question isn't whether teachers will keep quitting, because they will if nothing changes. The haunting question is whether the rest of California will keep pretending that schools can fail without the rest of life failing right behind them. Look up your district's latest budget and its multi-year projections, not the summary, the actual numbers. Track enrollment changes over the last 5 years and compare them to staffing levels and class sizes. Read the board agendas for cuts, consolidations, and emergency contracts and document every schedule change that forces you to miss work. Request the teacher vacancy list, the substitute fill rate, the counselor to student ratio, the campus safety staffing, and the maintenance backlog, because collapse leaves paperwork before it leaves ruins. Then ask with your evidence in hand who is taking a calculated retreat, who is practicing willful blindness, and who is treating your child's classroom like a financial grenade they can roll down the road for someone else to catch.